Morning, Thomas.
Good morning, Professor. How are you?
Hi. Morning, Darren.
Good morning.
Long
Hey,
time.
Darren. Good morning.
Long time no see.
Thomas, how are you?
Good.
Let's see who else joins us this morning. How's life been treating you, Tom?
It's been good. It's been a very busy but productive summer so far.
Okay. Okay. See, Darren, I did a forget what her name was. She interviewed me regarding you about a week or two ago.
Oh yeah, how'd that go?
It went well. I haven't. She said she was going to send me a transcript, or once you got it done, written up. But I haven't seen it yet. So
They reached out to me. I think I've seen a preliminary draft, but I haven't seen anything since. I'm gonna have to follow up with them to find out what they're doing with that thing. I think that's from what they were saying, it's gonna be one of a 3-part series for Black Belt.
yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So
It,
We
it
had a
was
good-
on the cross certification.
yeah, right. We had a good chat, and I said good things about you, so you're okay.
Thank you, Sensei.
So let's see who else is gonna. If anyone else is gonna show up. I gotta get that. Bear with me for a moment. Gotta get to the. I get the topics here. Good morning, Chris. Glad you're with us.
Good morning. Thank you.
And, we postponed this topic, which I think was yours, because I wanted you to be able to participate in the discussion. Having to do with it may be good to discuss some of the operational aspects of running a dojo, both from a business perspective and meeting the needs of the students. Was that your topic?
It may have been. It's been so long, it feels like.
I know it was several weeks, or should I say several meetings, because we how do you say, topics are, it's either feast or famine. Anyway, and we picked up one this past week on that we aren't going to get to, unfortunately, but active shooter training. And should you be involved as a martial arts instructor? Anyway, okay. Running a business, dojo is operational aspects. Do you run or work? Do you run or work in a dojo? Which I guess would mean, do you own or work in a dojo? And why do you do it? So I guess the first question is, why do you, I guess would be, why do you teach?
I know in my situation coming through the ranks, I don't remember ever hearing an instructor not say, if you get black belt, the assumption is you're going to teach. And when I tested for Shodan, I remember that it was assumed that there would then be a sensei test taken, and then there would be a proof of teaching going forward. And so in my mindset, that was just, that's why we did it. If you're going to do martial arts, you're going to teach it if you're going to get to that level. And that stuck. I know that not everybody holds to that. It's not always practicable, but I think the answer to the question from my vantage point is I teach because I do martial arts. And I do martial arts so I could teach,
Okay. You walk so you get somewhere, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess for me, I never did think of it that way. I don't know that it, hearing the question out loud or just thinking about it, I don't know that I've ever thought that once I reached any level that I would start teaching. I think it just became a way of life for me. And, my continued efforts in giving back or contributing or continuing to be a part of martial arts and not only just a little bit of my everyday life, but, a large part of it. I guess it just happened. I never did really think why I'm teaching or what was the reason behind it, or even coming up to a certain level that I would be, okay, one day I am going to teach. I think it just happened. I don't know. And I think that was just because of my continued efforts. And like I said, continuing to give back and contribute to martial arts.
Chris, you want to get a few words in?
Yeah, I think I may have posed this question because I do see a kind of a two-routed approach for most of the people teaching out there. So kind of the feedback we got here is more probably how we all grew up. You just ended up teaching at whatever dojo you were with, and then there's others that took more of a business approach. So sometimes, especially, in the past, probably even 10 years or so, what I'm seeing is the dojos that are approaching it at least partially from a business perspective are doing better as far as, surviving and growing. And the more traditional approach where basically every black belt, you get a showdown and you're going to start teaching, although they could be good teachers, they don't have that, business perspective in running a dojo, because if you're going to do things commercially, I think you do have to run it like a commercial business, at least a business aspect of it, from advertising to, the way you do enrollment to the way you teach and how the students progress. That's all part of business, but kind of like the old gym owners. So like my wife comes from a nutrition gym background. And in the old days, it was the same thing with the gym. Somebody has a hobby with lifting weights or, fitness, and then they scrap, some money together and open up a place and start teaching, because that's what they like to do. And they want other people around them that do the same thing. So it's more of a hobby. And until the bigger kind of corporate gyms came along and more or less wiped them out. They're still obviously, out there, but definitely it's not the majority. So I see the same type of thing. I always think of martial arts, from they're kind of 10, 15 years behind the gym industry as far as revolutionizing and moving forward. And so I was just curious, at least, from, this crowd, because it's more of a traditional, crowd, as to, how people are running things. The other part of that is organizations. A lot of people belong to some kind of organizations. And I don't see many organizations offering, this kind of help or guidance or assistance, to their membership as far as, running a successful dojo. And, there's one guy I know out of Florida, and his philosophy is, if you're not growing, you're dying, so, that's kind of how he leads his discussions. And although I think it's a little bit too black and white, as far as a statement goes, there's some truth to it from a business perspective. You can never really stand still. And in fact, it's kind of reflective of our martial arts too. If we're not growing as martial artists, then we're going backwards. You're either going forward or backwards. You're never really standing still. So, anyway, that was, I think, my contribution to this is at least to kind of think about different ways, to do things, because you can be the best teacher and have the best product, but if you're not thinking of it as a business to some extent, how well are you really doing, and how are you going to survive, in the future? If people don't know and they don't understand these days, it's nobody knows the difference between anything. It's whatever they see in the movies or sports, or or it just happens to be the closest one to their house. That's how that's the number one reason, by the way. We do polls, periodically, and the number one reason, just nationwide, at least in this country, it just happens to be close, it's clean, and it looks safe. So that's the kind of the top three.
In the late 90s, I had a commercial dojo, and that was when, if you may remember, NAPMA was up and going, and the Graydon brothers were involved. And when I was running that dojo, I initially joined NAPMA, and it was a great resource. It became very expensive. And when NAPMA eventually transitioned over to Stephen Oliver's leadership, it changed, from my vantage point, it changed into a marketing mechanism. And I backed away from it. My commercial dojo experience was always wherever I was pastoring. So if I moved to a church, well, then that changed. And then in 2011, I tied in with a gym location, 2 gyms, and had 2 dojos running there. And after a number of years, I'm not opposed to work, but it really started to feel like work to me. And so about 2015, I took a little different approach, and this works for me now. I have an invite only dojo opportunity, and I consistently have 10 students participating there. And then I have taught at every church I serve. So the church I serve now, we teach, and it's a community program that's offered to folks. And that I have found there personally the most freedom to enjoy the instruction without being tied to that compulsion to grow. But I also don't have anything financially tied to it. It's not paying any bills for me. The space is provided, or I'm blessed to have a big dojo space in the home I live in that we built into it. So I've gone through some cycles in my thinking on that. And I recently, Professor, I was out in California, and I saw several community park facilities, and I thought of you, and I thought, I'm sure there are people who go to those park facilities and say, hey, I want to do a program like you do. And then that's a little different model as well. So, but I think, Chris, what you're touching on is right on. If it's going to be on the commercial side, and it does tend to be better organized and intentional sometimes there, it takes a little different approach in how you're doing it.
I agree. I think Chris had made some valid points on different types of facilities and being commercialized and being business oriented. And TJ, you had made some things that really kind of hit home with me as far as in the heart, in my perspective on it. You have to applaud as much as I say, when you're looking at like the commercialized or the marketing efforts that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has done, right? And where that is today, you see these, what they refer to as in gyms, their attendance rate extremely high. They put 50 people on a mat at a time, or 60 people in some cases, depending on the size of the gym. And it's completely structured for business, just like it is. And then I have my facility, which is just like you said, TJ, it's more of a private entity. I don't really do that much marketing. People know who I am and they want to come there. So I get the more experienced people in those, in every other type of facility, whether it be a BJJ entity or a traditional martial arts facility, or even other styles of martial arts, they all, I'll get those people that just come into my classes, and my classes typically average about 15 to 20. Now, 20 participants at a time. I'll carry about on my, I guess, my list of people who frequent my dojo, about 65. I had just cut that down from like 85, that people that don't show anymore, but they're still on my list. But I don't never have a class that has 50 people in it ever. But I do have classes that would average around the 20 to 25 mark. And to be honest, I don't really care to have more than that on a mat at a time. I think that's a bunch. I would much rather have a class that has 7 to 10 people on a mat and that be it, or and then especially if Sensei Jack is there, or if I'm spending time with Sensei Kirby or anybody that's on the video right now, I would rather a class that's 1 to 5 people, and that's fantastic for me. And so when I look at it from a business perspective, I'm not really that concerned about it, but I understand and I applaud them for their efforts and what they're doing in a business aspect. But traditionally, and kind of contributing back to martial arts and what we do in jujitsu and Budoshin and Manami-ryu and the styles that we practice, I much rather have been focused on the traditional side. And then I've also have taught a program which gym, and they've had me in there in every program that they've had in that gym. When I was over there teaching, participated in my classes, every single program. My class didn't necessarily participate in every program that was in that gym, but every instructor, every person that came in through that gym wanted to take my class. And then, so I stayed there for a couple of years, but ultimately I decided that just wasn't for me. And I wanted to go back to the traditional side. And again, back to what you were saying, TJ, had having my own facility, and it's more of a private facility, and it's strictly traditional, and I do still refer to it as a dojo because that's what it is. It's just not a gym for me. That's kind of like my approach and what I've experienced.
Okay, let me get a word in right here. I asked the question, then everybody took off with it, and even Dave Clark has been sitting there patiently chomping at the bit. I'm going to have to, don't say anything yet, Dave. I'm going to have to request that the start meeting sign came on right at the beginning of our discussion. So I'd like to go back to TJ, Darren, and Chris, and if you can kind of if you can kind of summarize what you said at the first time in just a couple minutes, just in case it wasn't recording. And we'll TJ, Darren, and Chris, then we'll go to Dave. And because I don't want to lose what you said initially. And then I'll go back when I do the edit. If it was recording, in fact, then I can cut this part out. So not a task that I relish, but
I will tell you, Professor, when I logged on, it did tell me that it's recording, and on my side, it showed recording the whole time.
okay.
Yeah, it's been recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
They were okay. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for saving my derriere. Okay. Dave, want to get a word in edgewise on the first question, which is, do you run or work in a dojo, and why do you do it?
But I'd rather work in a dojo. And why do I do it?
No.
You said?
Do you run? Okay. Let me rephrase the question here, because Dave has a warped mind like I do. And no, you don't run in a dojo. Do you operate your own dojo, or do you work in someone else's dojo? And why do you teach, I guess is a question.
Well, first of all, let me apologize to everybody. I attempted to start getting on using my ancient computer at about 10 minutes to 11 and you saw how long it took me to join you guys. So I apologize. I'm in the process of acquiring a new computer setup. Anyways, yes, I feel happy to be able to run our own dojo because I don't feel like it's a not-for-profit dojo, but we do take in monies, and 100% of what we bring in is donated to underprivileged youth, and has been the entirety of of our dojo since 2007. The beautiful thing about what we're doing, I'm somewhere between what Darren was describing as optimum. We average about a dozen students per class, which is plenty. Like Darren, I would prefer to have 7 or 8 at a time, but we make 12 work just fine. We're usually working in groups of 3 and 4. I, unlike a for-profit dojo, feel no compulsion to operate the most current and most interested martial art that the public seems to prefer. Taekwondo holds a high spot in the United States, as does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as does what's called mixed martial arts. I much prefer to be able to focus on that which I, in my experience, find to be most practical, street smart, so to speak. And I feel like I'm doing the most good by presenting the most practical techniques, and not necessarily what's most popular in the eyes of the general public. Pretty much what I got to say on it. Thoroughly enjoy it, and I thoroughly miss it. We're still in the process of gradually reopening from COVID. I am doing personal private lessons with parents in attendance, but our dojo has not officially reopened yet.
Okay, to get my 2 cents in, I never expected to teach. And you probably heard the story. One day, Seki came up to Bill Fromm and me in the dojo, and in his dojo, and said, "You're going to take over the Burbank Y because the instructor is leaving." And that's the way he did things. So we started teaching, and been teaching ever since through community service agencies. I guess the agency takes care of the business end of things, so I've never had to really worry about that aspect, be it good or bad at times. I teach. I mean, I had a good, well-paying job. I have a retirement plan that's keeps me above water. And so I'm not, I'm not looking to anything. I say it wasn't work for me. I didn't have to look at it as a work or a job. It was more of something I enjoy doing and I want to do. And so that's why I do it. And it's the program has gone through a lot of evolutions. Because sometimes students really come up with good ideas on how things can be better, as well as listening to other instructors and finding out what they do. I think in one of my editorials that's coming out, I deal with teachers and senseis being thieves. And if we see a good idea from someone else, we'll use it. And I know professionally as a school teacher, I had no problems using other teachers' ideas. And their teachers are very protective of their ideas, which is the other side of the coin. And they get upset when you take their idea and maybe modify it. But anyway, so I've done it for the enjoyment of it. Classes size have been, we just opened up our program. We have 11 students. I'd like to get up around 15 to 18, but that'll happen. That'll take a couple more sessions to do. And it's a good sized group. And same thing from being a classroom teacher. I know that about 18 to 20 kids in the classroom is really an ideal teaching situation. When you get to 35 and 40 kids, you know, I felt sorry for the kids. But in any case, so, you know, 18, 20, 15, 18, 20, that's a nice number of people to work with, because you can really individualize and you can really help them as individuals. And I'm going to leave it at that right now. So we're going to go to the second one, which I think we've covered to some extent. What is your end goal for teaching and training beyond I like it or I want to help people? I'll start this time. I'd like to see every one of my students become a black belt and open up their own dojo and expand the art of Budoshin Jujitsu. That's from a purely commercial and self-satisfaction viewpoint, okay? The reality is I know that won't happen. I've had really good black belts who don't want to teach. Can they teach? Yes. Can they work with individuals? Yes, they just don't want to do it. And unfortunately, you know, and so it's kind of like a contradiction there. You have students that want to learn and want to become black belts and become good black belts. The other side of the coin is they don't want to teach. And you can't really force a student to do that. And I'll weed students out for other reasons. But I won't, you know, it's disappointing to me because, you know, as a sensei, you put a lot of work into your students. And if they're a black belt, you've busted your buns over the years to get them there. And it's kind of like you'd like to see them get out and start a dojo and have them have students and have some of the same satisfaction that you've had as a sensei. And to me, that's frustrating and disappointing, but I don't know how to get more people around it. On the other hand, I see a lot of students that have come in and it's increased their self-confidence. It helps them make a better person. They recognize it. And I think one of the great goals of being a teacher of anything or being a parent is if your student or your child can walk away with a better self-image, more self-confidence, willing to try new things, you know, and they have a good sense of integrity and they become good, they're good people. You've been successful as a sensei or a teacher, because that doesn't happen naturally. So, you know, you have to look at, you know, what are your goals and objectives, I think. Yeah, I'd like to see every student become a black belt. Will it happen? No. Okay, who's next?
I'll be glad to jump in here. Through the years, I've noticed that in spite of the fact that I thoroughly enjoyed two profitable businesses in the same town for longer than I want to admit, almost 50 years now, I see in myself the desire to volunteer, and I've done it a number of ways. So I feel like Jiu-Jitsu allows me to carry out that volunteering desire, but in a very specific way, rather than paint your heart out for, you know, all these other different volunteer efforts I've been a part of. And I like being able to head it up. I like being able to give back to the community. I love the feedback I get from my students when on occasion one comes to me and says, I used it and here's what happened. I also like the fact that through the years, we kept a running total. Before COVID struck, we had raised over $35,000 for underprivileged youth through not just our dojo, but also the Art and Chaos of Self-Defense program that I teach twice a year to the general public, where the classes are 16 to, our largest class was 40 people. That's designed primarily for women's self-defense, but I have sheriff's deputies show up for class, and a wide swath of society who join the classes. And it's also heartwarming to hear their stories when they come back and teach the class, and tell me their experiences when some of those people have had to use it through the years. So I find that volunteering is a two-edged sword. There's the fun of volunteering, the heartwarming sensation of giving back. But then there's the selfish aspect of volunteering, which says, darn, this is so much fun. And so you feel selfish for how much you enjoy it. There you have it.
Okay, anybody else want to comment on what's your goal in teaching and training beyond I like it or I want to help people?
Sensei, I think that, and I apologize, everyone. I'm actually on the move a little bit, so you'll see me in different spots. But, I feel like through my experience in teaching, you have practitioners that are very talented in performing technique. And then you have practitioners that are very, very good at teaching. And it's rare that you find an individual that really does both well. So when, as much as I would like to see every single black belt come out and continue to teach, I don't know that all of them are good for teaching, but I still want them to continue to promote what we do, to grow what we do in our dojo.
Here we're losing you, Darren. We lost you. We lost you, Darren. Okay, anyone else want to continue?
I'm as I was listening to Dave, I was thinking about a key point in my development. So it started training in '84 and taught under different teachers. But in '97, my first child was born. And it was at that point that I remember my wife and I were out on a walk, strolling our youngest, who's now 25, in the neighborhood. And I said, I really want to teach, Ireland is her name, I really want to be able to teach Ireland martial arts. And that began something of a dad martial artist mission, where all 5 now, from soon to be 11 up to 25 of the kids have all really been the ongoing motivation to make sure that I'm continuing to teach, continuing to train on my own and learn and do different things. I honestly don't know, had we not had the 5 kids, if my instructor experience would have turned out the same way, but it did. 3 girls and 2 boys. And that of course has led to a lot of other things and a lot of other opportunities, but there was that, I think, a holistic and honorable self-serving motivation, as I really wanted my kids able to learn martial arts and be able to defend themselves. And that has driven part of it along the years as well. And my oldest daughter now is very involved. She's the assistant in anything I teach and the main fallback when I have to travel and so on. So.
Okay, Chris, you want to throw in a few words?
Yeah, for me, I think depending on when you ask me that question in my life, the answer may have been slightly different. For me, I think I've shared my story a little bit. There's never been a time in my life that I haven't been doing martial arts in some form or fashion, literally before I can even walk. I think when you get halfway decent at things, you naturally end up in positions to pass that on, to help others, whether it's in sports or crafts or, science, whatever it is. So I've always been teaching in some fashion since probably my mid-teens, even in a helping capacity or whatever. And then I ended up with a dojo just by circumstance. I was working with a couple of the local police departments, and they had the space that they had abandoned, and it just happens to be now part of Parks and Recs, but Parks and Recs wasn't using it. It had been sitting there for at least a decade. And so they literally gave me the place to, start teaching outside of the law enforcement arena. And that's kind of how it started. Then over time, well, can I bring my friend? Can I bring my kid? That wasn't involved in law enforcement. And, when you like what you're doing, like everybody else, it's hard to say no. So people start coming in. And so I then, you're running a dojo. And as it grew, then I realized I can't keep running it and teaching it the way I've been doing it because of the sheer size and volume of people. And so I decided to run it, or at least incorporate a lot of business aspects into running it, which of course it benefited from an organizational planning, a liability, all those factors that you never really thought about before or had implemented, and it's there. So today I teach really for two reasons. It's always helped me in my life. I know of many other people that it's helped also, and so to me it's really about bringing out people's full potential. I think one of the saddest things is sometimes people go through life without realizing their full potential, their untapped potential. And it's kind of like, look, even just to use a biblical example, Jesus had 12 official, disciples, and out of that 12, now thousands of years later, it's still having a tremendous influence, right? So it's really about helping people improve and change their life, and in turn, hopefully they'll be inspired to do the same. And to me, that's how we change, things, for the better. And that's the primary reason. And the secondary reason is it's just, to me, it's turned into a ministry, also. So it's an opportunity to help people beyond martial arts, because they kind of look at, they look at you as, you got your act together and you handle problems better, you're, more calmer. And why is that? And so it just sparks those conversations, and anybody that's open, I share and I help, beyond the martial arts. So it's really just about that. And just to use a quick example, yesterday I was training with Hanshi Yamashita, my instructor, and he had some personal business to take care of, which was a little bit, of a challenge. So I drove him around to a couple of places, and people that, tried to help couldn't. So we went to a third place. Finally, the guy was able to help. I'll leave the details out. But, and just waiting for the guy to help, I just, I naturally just chat with people, and I started chatting with him, and he says, he's done martial arts. He's a Hapkido guy, and I happen to know the instructor that he trained with. So Sensei Yamashita tells me, see, martial arts guy. That's why he can help. He was respectful. He was, attentive and kind of hardworking. All those qualities came across. And whether that was the case or not, the point is that I think people who are trained, well, and are in good dojos and have that sense of family and wanting to help and all that, really do well outside of the dojo too. That reflects outside of the dojo. I just thought it was funny that it just, happened yesterday. And then, of course, there's the dojo itself. It provides sometimes in today's term, a safe place for people, to come and feel part of a family. There's a lot of, messed up things out there with families and relationships and things. So it's always good for them to come to a stable place. They still have to work hard. Of course, they don't get breaks because of their circumstance, but it's a supportive place. It's a welcoming place, and it's a consistent place. Many a times that we've had social workers that come because parents are getting a divorce, and so they're looking into what the kids are involved with, and they've all consistently shared that it's great that the kids are here because everything in their life is changing, and this might be the one place that it isn't, and how important that is. So that's what motivates me to continue teaching and contributing is because of, not only is it making a difference in producing good martial artists with good self-defense, but it's influencing their lives outside of that. And like many of you, I'm sure there's many examples we can all share, for those students we've kept in touch with. It's really one of the best things to me that you can do. And it's much needed in today's world. So
Right. I think what we're all trying to say in our different ways is that what we're doing helps other people and sometimes in ways we can't even measure. And that is, I think in any profession, if you can do that, you get a sense, a good feeling of accomplishment that is basically priceless. No one can pay you an amount equal to the satisfaction that you get when you see one of your students being successful or overcoming an obstacle, or it's like your own kids. It's a feeling that what you have given them or helped them develop, it's kind of like paying it forward. And by them going out and being successful or overcoming obstacles and stuff like that, it comes back to the sense of self-satisfaction for you. You've been able to do something good, and you were able to help another person. And I don't think there's anything that beats that in the world. And it's nice to be able to. It's nice, we're also all in a position where we can offer to do that, where we're available to do that to help others, and whether that be through religious ministry or martial arts or being a classroom teacher, or even, we have a gardener, because I don't do lawns, and he does a beautiful job, and we pay him a decent wage, and we say hi to each other, and occasionally we talk, and it's just you get beyond. If you are a good quote unquote sensei, you get beyond the teacher-student relationship. I've known some students for 50 years, and they have kids. I anticipate some of them pretty soon will be having grandchildren, and you're just happy that they've made it this far and they're doing well and their families are doing okay, and that you had some input into their success, so to speak, or accomplishment. And that's priceless. So anyway,
Sensei, to your point, years and years ago, I remember reading more than once about extremely successful people leaving business, taking a pay cut so they could go, because of the very satisfaction you speak about. And so I look at that and I say they did it because money only brings so much return after you earn X amount, but you can still feel like you're leading a less full existence or a meaningless existence after you've earned X amount of millions of dollars. But teaching can bring meaning to your life and to a lot of other people's lives. And it sounds altruistic and it sounds self-serving and it's sounds like we're talking and pontificating here. But the bottom line is it's true.
Well, I say it. We all have to find what makes us happy. I mean, that's the ideal goal in life. It doesn't matter what your religion, occupation, marital status, physical condition. Our goal in life is to be able to do that which makes us happy. And I mean, success is involved in that, financial success is involved in that to some extent, but, it's something I think we're able to do because we connect with people on such a personal level. And we do get to know our students, that we sort of like become part of the family. And when they achieve some level of success, it comes back to us. And you're proud, you're proud for that person, you're happy for them, and you're glad to see that they're successful. And those are all things you cannot buy. And maybe to an extent, that's why we go into the martial arts, and to an extent, that's why we teach, because we have we've acquired that skill, and that skill allows us to, in essence, help another person. So, it's to me, it's kind of neat. Can't buy that. Okay, the next one. What is the format of your classes? Are they consistent? Are they structured to meet the end goals? Okay, so I guess we're going to work this backwards, and what maybe each of you, what if you have students, number one, what is your goal? And number two, how do you get there? Or how do you get them there? Okay, so anyone want to start in with it?
I can jump in here at the risk of talking too much. One of the things that I had to come to realize, and teaching in a group setting helped me quickly realize this, is that students can easily fall into two main categories. Enthusiastic students who really want to learn and want to compress timeframes, can get a lot done in advance. And those who are there just because it's a hobby and it's fun. And those people deserve a lot of the same things that the extremely enthusiastic student. I don't think less of them because they want to do it as a hobby and they just want to go at a very casual pace. But I had to come to terms as a teacher to accept that not everybody's going to be as enthusiastic about this as we teachers are. So it helped me as a teacher to basically see, based on what students were doing, which ones are hobbyists, which ones are enthusiasts, and actually work that way rather than trying to make all the hobbyists into enthusiasts. That will happen on occasion, but a lot of hobbyists are just that for the time they're in the dojo. My goal, like anybody, bring as many people up through ranks as possible, because they'll get more out of it by putting more into it. And hobbyists will put less into it enthusiasts will put plenty in. It's a joy to bring people to brown belt, black belt, and beyond. But it's also a joy to watch a hobbyist learn a few new techniques. Be excited about it.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think that may have been one of my questions too. When I was younger, I've had instructors where they would come in and it would start with, today we're working on this. And later I realized that it's really what they wanted to work on that day. And there wasn't really necessarily a building block structure to get you, somewhere. So, the more enthusiastic students did okay, because it didn't matter what order you learned things in or what you were learning. You just always worked hard and did good. And when it came test time, then you did fine. But then there were others that didn't function that way and, really got left behind because they needed something a little bit more structured. So today, I think the same type of thing exists out there. There's some teachers that just come in and this is what we're working on today, and there's not necessarily any rhyme or reason. And then there's others that have a curriculum and this is what you need for this belt and this is what you need for this belt. But then there's also how you run the class, right? You may have a curriculum, but it's also how you run the class. So as each class you're running, bringing them one step closer to that, because it's one thing when you have, say, all blue belts, right? Because everybody's doing the same thing. But it's another thing when you have, 30 people in the class and it varies from yellow belt to brown belt. How do you run that class, to make sure every single person there is, coming up, is being prepared for their next rank. So there's all those kind of different elements. And I was just curious, from this group, how, others are doing things also.
Yeah, I tend to, I've got the student handbook, and that evolved out of when I wanted to teach jujitsu for LA City schools. They said you need to have goals and objectives. That handbook has changed, I don't know how many times over the years. Part of it is because if I find something works, I get bored. And there's nothing worse than a bored teacher or boring teacher. So I will, even though for those of you that are familiar with the handbook, there's a kata, and I stick pretty close to that. Although I may teach it in different ways, I may use it for different attacks. I may use it, I may show a variation of, like for example, Koshinagi. There's so many different kinds of hip throws. You could teach those for 10 years and not repeat anything. I'm exaggerating here, but it keeps my interest up, and that's for a sensei or a teacher. To me, that's critical. If students see that you're interested, that you're enthused, you have a greater chance of getting them enthused. With the Waza, I can have fun with that, and that's my real variable. And students sometimes get frustrated because I'm showing different things than what they learned previously, and they ask, well, why aren't you teaching this? And I said, because today I'm teaching this. As Chris has said this, what are we doing today? And I think if you have a strong base of techniques, you can do that. Seki never tested. With Seki, there was a lot of redundancy, but every night he'd have 2 or 3 new techniques in with the redundancy, and it worked for him. He had no curriculum. He was very traditional. If he felt you had a certain, and I worked, if you had a certain proficiency, you got a promotion, or you had survived him for 6 months, you got a promotion. And I initially ran my quote unquote dojo at the Y, and the junior high I was teaching at as an after school club initially. I ran it that way, very informally. But the formal way of having some general requirements that kids know, the students know what their expectations are, or your expectations are, gives them a sense, many people, a sense of direction and accomplishment. And I guess being measurable is important. Being measurable is important too. Because you as a sensei, if you see your student is a fourth Q, you know he has certain skills and proficiencies. If you have a set curriculum, and that's the advantage of a set curriculum. You know where your students are, or ideally where they should be. And some students learn faster, some students learn slower, some are hobbyists, some are really enthusiastic. With hobbyists, when Dave was mentioning that, when they do something right, I really praise them tremendously, because I'm hoping to change that hobby attitude into enthusiasm attitude, because, oh, sensei recognized me for doing something really well. Maybe I am good at this. And once, and that goes to, once you turn a student on, then they really can start learning, or they will start learning, because they've recognized the value of what they're doing, and they've given them sense of accomplishment. I've had 2 weeks of class, and I had a student say, I'm not learning anything. And I said, be patient. We all use that phrase, be patient. And I just told the whole class, I said, one of the nice things about jujitsu is that no one gets worse. You can only get better in here. And that seemed to be okay with them, because with jujitsu, most people really are starting out at zero. And you bring them up, and they can see, if they stick with you, they can see their progress. It's visible. So
Sensei,
go ahead.
to add on to what you're saying now, and some of the things that also I was mentioning. First of all, I'd like to say, for everyone here, and Chris, you do an extremely good job at taking a lot of different views, topics, comments that all of us make, and put it in a perspective where it's articulated to where everyone can say, yes, it's exactly what my mindset is, my thought is. I applaud that and very much appreciate that. And Sensei, you're incredible with, being such the moderator that kind of takes all of our views and perspectives and points and ties them all together to make it make sense in the end. Consolidating and putting it together, and yes, everything that everyone said, you bring it all together in one summarized point is incredible. So I appreciate those things. And when you look at the to what Dave was saying, and the enthusiast and the hobbyist, and then how you try to get that hobbyist to be enthused, and understanding how people, their development, their growth, right? And one of the things that I always say is, look, if you think you're not, and this is what really inspires the hobbyist, if you think you're not progressing, if you think you're not developing, if you think you're not making up any ground, if you think you're not better than where you were when you first started, the easiest way to identify it, because most people, just about every person, really doesn't see their self and develop, certainly not right away. When you're looking within, you don't see that development. But I always encourage people, when you come to class your first time, or your second time, or your third time, or if you've been here for a week or so, video yourself, and then watch that video 3 weeks from now, watch that video 3 months from now, and you will see night and day difference from where you started to where you are today. And even the hobbyist is wow, they can't even fathom the amount of growth that they've had in the time from the first time that they've videoed to the next time. And usually that's short-lived to where you could do those in short time spurts or even longer time spurts. And with the more time in between the first video to the next video, you can see tremendous amount of growth and development. And so that hobbyist now becomes the enthusiast because they're like, I can't even believe the development that I'm seeing in myself. You can't deny it at that point.
TJ?
This is kind of a nuts and bolts answer to the structuring. And then I have a follow-on question for you, Professor. When my classes are divided, when I look at planning in thirds, so the first third of the class, we're going to do basic skills, Kihon, and review. I teach a rotating curriculum, so all the belt levels are working together, and I'm looking at a white belt versus a brown belt. I'm expecting them to do X, Y, Z at whatever level of proficiency is. So we'll do a third of basic skills, and then we'll spend a third of the time working on specific Goshin Waza self-defense techniques. And then the last half, we do kata forms. Some of the Chinese arts that I do come in there. And that is a recipe that has come over years of trying lots of different ingredients and trying to manage a flowing class that doesn't only appeal to one segment's interest. Some people would love to do nothing but self-defense the entire time. And some people only want to do forms and so on. And the other is just realizing I don't have the capacity on my schedule to run 10 classes a week, 3 for this level, 3 for that. So that has worked very well for us. And then when I of course, when I do it in the church setting, as an extension of my pastoral ministry, there's a mat talk time in there that is usually on some character development, faith-based and so on. So that has worked well. And I've also found that if I'm teaching an instructor to teach, the overwhelming, oh my goodness, you want me to teach, it never goes away completely, but it does minimize it if I say, well, what I want you to do is help with the Kihon today, or we're going to do this Goshin Waza, and this is really where you're going to help. And suddenly it becomes these bite-sized pieces for the instructors to develop around. My question is, when you mentioned you did the after-school program, how many days a week were you meeting for that program, if you don't mind? And could you elaborate a little on how that happened?
It was an after-school club. It met once a week in the gym. I had 25, 30 people. Sometimes we met twice a week. There was usually several people sitting on the bench waiting to get in the class. And if a student was absent 3 weeks, they lost their space in the class. So no one missed class. It's nice to have a waiting list. Those days are long gone. And it was, I don't know whether it worked well because kids liked me in the classroom, or I won't say they liked me, they were able to do well in my classes, or there was a certain relationship that developed. They realized that I was someone they could talk with, someone that would listen with them, and that plays out, and I'm sure that plays out in other areas of your life. I'm sure all of us recognize that. That program just simply got so big that one year the school district had to cut back because of the funding problem. And so they eliminated 1 hour of instruction a week from the junior high school. And the principal said, okay, teachers, you're here anyway, so come up with something you want to do. And I came up with a jujitsu elective. And so that actually went to 2 or 3 days a week. Another teacher came up with cadet corps because he had been in the military. That worked. And surprisingly, every other program that the other 80 or 90 teachers came up with failed. And we finally figured out the reason that both our programs worked, and then they were incorporated into the regular school curriculum once we got our full funding back, was because the kids wanted discipline. They wanted consistency. They wanted something where they could see how they could grow and, expand their knowledge. Kids need discipline. Adults need discipline. We all need discipline. And it was discipline combined with fairness, and they were learning something in the process. And so it evolved, and then once I wanted to make it part of the regular curriculum, the principal said, you've got to have goals and objectives. And so we took a 1 semester PE class, which was all the district offered in self-defense. It was actually only 6 weeks long out of a semester. And we expanded it to where it could be, the kids could take it for 3 years. Like I said, I was fortunate to have a really good principal. His goal was to keep kids in school. And the cadet corps and jujitsu were actually keeping kids in school. So he basically bent over and did whatever he could to help us because, and in turn, other teachers would come to us and say, so-and-so isn't doing well in my class. Is there anything you can do to get them to do better? And I'd go to the kid and say, if you don't get a C in your math class, you're not getting an A in my class. And the kids knew I was kidding, but they'd get up to a C. Just, kids can do, and adults can do if they're motivated, or if they like you, or if they want to impress you. They have all sorts of, people have all sorts of motivations for doing things. And I think the key as a sensei is for you, whether it be a child or adult, is to tap into whatever their motivation is. And it might be bad to say to use their motivation, but that's what we're doing. And if we can get them to self-motivate, then that once, that's what I said before, once you can get your students to self-motivate, they can be successful in other areas too, because they see that they can do things that they didn't think they could do. So anyway.
If I might ask one follow on, you mentioned earlier in your current context, you teach in sessions. So I guess the Park District has sessions.
Yeah.
How many times a year are those, and how long do the sessions last, and so on?
Okay, the sessions are, we like to say we have a 10-week session. And right now, I took it down from a 2-hour to a 1.5-hour class, but we eliminated the break and some of the other fluff from the program. And I'm going to see how that works. In between sessions, which may be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, I tell my students, and I tell them at the outset, we're going to keep meeting. You're not paying for it. Okay, because I don't have to do this for a living. You're not paying for this, but we may cover something special aspect of jujitsu. We may do groundwork for 4 weeks, but I won't tell them that ahead of time because half don't show up for groundwork if they know ahead of time. We may be working on Hambo techniques of Kubotan, or we may do work on nerve techniques for 2 weeks, or we'll take one aspect of jujitsu and concentrate on that for 3 or 4 weeks. So that's kind of like the reward for putting up with 10 weeks of normal instruction. And one of the other things I do is I will have upper belts work with lower belts in terms of working technique, practicing techniques. And one of the things I've found is that sometimes, you know, and some students are really good at helping other students. And like, I don't know whether you said it or who said it, if you can get them turned on to helping other students, it's easier to, you have a better chance of them becoming a instructor once they become black belt, because the light turns on in them too, you know, that they can help others. And then you have some, like I have one student who has been helping other students ever since he was a white belt, and he's now a purple belt. I don't know how much higher in rank he will go, but he is always willing to help other students learn, and you know, he works with them, and the guy has a really good heart, and he's got the technical skills too, and that makes him better too. And as I tell my students, you know, you really don't learn anything until you have to teach it to someone else, and then you find out all your mistakes. and then I tell them, you know, don't worry about it. Like in the classroom, I'd say, don't worry about making mistakes. You'll learn more from making mistakes in life than you will by doing things right. And that's how most people learn, is by making mistakes. So, you know, and if I see it as a safety hazard, I'll stop you. If it's not a safety hazard, you know, let's see where it goes. And part of that is you have to be willing to trust your students to use good judgment too. And most of the time they can. So anyway.
Sensei, if I might jump in just briefly, to your point that you were making earlier, and also Darren alluded to this, and Chris as well. As a teacher, if you can reach them on a self-esteem level, which is outwardly directed and basically how others see us or see the world, as opposed to self-perception. As a teacher, if you can move from self-esteem to a student's self-perception, now you're having them turn inward, look inside themselves, not at how others see them, but as how they see themselves. And if you get there, you can reach them on a much more highly evolved level. And you do them a great service by their self-perception, not just their self-esteem. Self-esteem is service, self-perception is.
Yeah, boy, did everybody see Dave's eyes light up in the last here?
But Darren, you went to it beautifully. So did you, Chris. And Sensei, it was a big part of the point you were making just previous to where we went. I just absolutely, that's a big part of what turns me on to teachers. Once I know I can move beyond self-esteem and get to their self-perception and get them believing in themselves, it's like, wow. And I'm not doing it any way but genuine. They have to give me something to hang on to that I can mention that they know is genuine.
Right.
And then I don't.
You got them right.
We're eating out of the same bowl.
Yeah, you've got to find, you know, and I'm sure all of you know this, you've got to find out what turns the kid on or turns the student on, and that's what you use, because your goal is their success, and you see your success from their success. So, and Dave, I also want to compliment you, because principal would have me in for other teacher interviews, and I'd watch person's body language. And that's what he would ask me about after the interview was over. And that was one of his factors in hiring a teacher. I want you to know that your eyes never went to the up in the upward and right direction. And that shows a person's trying to find an answer or maybe lying.
Okay.
Your eyes did not go to the right and up at all. It's like a person's trying to think, what can I say? And that's a natural eye movement. Okay. Anyway, so now that I've created some paranoia here. Anyway, body language is interesting. And it's a really important, there are some really good books out there on body language and in terms of self-defense. It's really, this is not a topic here, it's really important to be able to use the other person's and your body language to influence the other person or to see what they might do. And that really has to be for your upper belts, that has to be, or self-defense classes, that has to be an important aspect of it. Anyway, and who makes it, how many of you know what makes it visually watching a person move, what makes them a good victim or not? I mean, it's just a great topic, but we'll, I'll jot that down for the future. Okay, let's go on here because we're still dealing with Chris's topics. And I think we're going to get to one more, and then we're going to have to call it a day today.
Hey, I'm actually going to have to run. I got to get down to the dojo to teach. So,
okay, we'll stop there. We'll come back. We'll come back and continue on with your questions. We'll go on with someone else's. Okay.
Thank you. We'll see you guys. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, another future topic, body language. We're going to switch down to topic number 2, which is I'm getting up in years. When should I retire? I'm not necessarily referring to me. Although I do have that discussion on occasion. So I guess the question is when, this may be a totally personal item. And I don't know if any of you have thought of it.
Okay.
Is Darren? Yeah, Darren's still with us. Just no video. There he is. He's back. And Darren, I think, is the youngin here. So this is really far removed from Darren. He's probably got a good, 30, 40 years left.
If I may jump in here for a moment, there's professions where when you retire, it's all or nothing. If you are a classroom teacher, you can't. I suppose you could volunteer to become a teacher's aide or something part-time, but it's pretty much all or nothing. Either you do the job or you retire. A lot of businesses are that way. With self, yes. There are various ways to
no video.
Get semi-retired. So you can be as active as you want. You can be a guest sensei, and not operate a dojo, but participate in other people's. And so you're not fully retired, but you're semi-retired.
Okay. Darren, I'm getting a signal that your bandwidth is low. You need to get a couple more people in your band. Okay, moving right along here. So,
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hear you now.
Okay. No, what I was saying was I don't know that there ever is a retirement. I think that the importance of the continued efforts and contribution that the people who have come before have the knowledge and the not only the institutional knowledge but the lineage knowledge and the experience behind of what they can show. So I mean, I don't know that I've never thought of ever considering or thinking about a retirement for anyone, especially myself. I thought that there's always a way that you can contribute to students that's extremely valuable. It doesn't always have to be in a physical sense, but the knowledge and insight and demonstration in other ways, as Dave was mentioning just now, is extremely valuable. And I don't know that there ever is a time when you would consider that to be a retirement time. I don't know that there's a time for retirement. I think that the way that you continue to contribute in other ways is just as valuable as a physical aspect.
Well, when I think about this, I also think about it from the perspective of what I do for my full-time living, which is preaching. And I have the same mindset. I don't see a time when I won't, unless I physically can't do it, when I won't be involved. But as Darren just talked about,
Lost you, TJ.
there, am I back now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. What I was saying is I don't know that I see a retirement time in any of my vocations, but I do see a time when I move from the primary practitioner to the teacher of those who will carry it on after my departure.
Okay.
DJ, what you're mentioning there is what people call mentoring,
Absolutely.
which is what
Yeah.
Kirby does so well too, and for all of us. And it's magnanimous. It's a wonderful thing to do, and I wish more people did it. I've seen many people retire, and that's bad. If you want anything from them, you got to ask.